What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be doing my updated 2025 NASCAR Cup Series silly season predictions. I'm going to go through all the full-time entries and the part-time entries for 2025. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start talking about the one car for Trackhouse Racing. There'll be no changes through 2025 as Ross Chastain has a long-term contract with Trackhouse Racing. While Ross has struggled so far in the 2024 season, he'll be looking to get better in 2025. He'll be looking for better performance and better speed, and we'll see if Ross Chastain can do that as he looks to get better throughout the rest of 2025. He'll stay in the one car next year. Up next, up with the two car for Team Penske. While it's not been officially announced, it's expected that Austin Hendrick will once again be in the two car for Team Penske in 2025. Austin Hendrick has a really up and down year. While he did get the win at Gateway, he's only had 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s so far this year. He'll be looking for a bounce back year in 2025, looking to get better. He'll probably be in a contract year once again next year, but Austin Hendrick is expected to return to the 2 car in 2025. Up next, how about the 3 car for Richard Childress Racing? There have been rumors of changes coming, but it's expected that Austin Dillon will stay in the 3 car through 2025 and also 2026. While Austin Dillon the last couple years has struggled, we do know that there's been some big executive changes coming over at Richard Childress Racing soon. Someone thought maybe he was going to go up to the competition role, but for 2025, Austin Dillon is going to stay in the 3 car at least for the next couple years and couple of seasons. Up next, how about the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports? There won't be any changes in 2025 as Kyle Larson has a contract at Hendrick Motorsports through 2026. And I would not be surprised or shocked if Kyle Larson gets another multi-year extension with Hendrick Motorsports. Larson's already won 4 races so far this year and could win his second NASCAR Cup Series championship this year. He also could run the Indy 500 potentially in 2025 as he technically does have a multi-year deal to do that. So I think Kyle Larson will end up doing that. And we will once again see Kyle Larson continue driving the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports in 2025. Up next, how about the 6 car for RFK Racing? There won't be any changes in 2025 as Brad Keselowski has a multi-year deal. And remember, Brad Keselowski, of course, is a co-owner of the organization. While Brad has flirted retirement in recent years, Brad has also stated that he's not planning to retire anytime soon. Now, he is getting a little bit older. At the end of 2025, he'll be 41 years old. But I don't see Brad Keselowski going anywhere, at least for the foreseeable future. He's starting to become competitive once again. We'll see Brad Keselowski continue driving the number 6 car, at least for the foreseeable future, and we'll stay in the 6 car once again in 2025. Up next, how about the 7 car for Spire Motorsports? There will be a driver change in 2025 as Corey LaJoie will not be returning to Spire Motorsports next season. So now the big question surrounds who's going to drive the 7 car for next year. Some of the names that have been mentioned as possibilities are Zane Smith, Carson Hocevar, Justin Haley, Kyle Busch, and Sam Mayer. But the most likely driver to drive the 7 car next year will be Zane Smith. I think Zane Smith will be in the 7 car in 2025 because I think the Trackhouse is going to make sure to find a way to keep him around for one more year. Plus him having the chance and opportunity to ride Mitch Childers, I think would be a really great move. We've seen Zane Smith really showing a lot of improvement, and I think that improvement is only going to continue going into next year. So therefore, I think Zane Smith once again will be back at the 7 car once again. We'll move from the 71 car and move over to the 7 car in 2025. Up next, how about the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing? While there have been rumors of Kyle Busch potentially leaving RCR at the end of this year, he's expected to return to the 8 car in 2025. Look, Kyle Busch has had a bad year in 2024. There's no denying that. But I think Kyle Busch can get better, especially whatever executive changes they're planning over there. I think it could really help Kyle Busch get a lot better. I don't think that Kyle Busch is a problem. Yes, he's been making some mistakes, but Kyle Busch is not the problem at Richard Childress Racing. So I don't think anything's going to change for 2025. I do think Kyle Busch will be in the 8 car once again next season. Up next, talk about the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Chase Elliott has a contract with Hendrick Motorsports through 2027. Chase Elliott's really had a big resurgence here in 2024 as he already picked up a win earlier this year at Texas Motor Speedway, and he's only continuing to get better as he's had one of the best average finishes so far this season. Chase is also looking for a second championship in 2024. If he cannot get it by the end of 2024, I think he has got a really good chance and opportunity to do it in 2025. Up next up with the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Denny Hamlin has a contract with JGR through the 2025 season. Now, Denny Hamlin could retire at the end of next year with him being 45 at the end of next year, but I do think that Denny Hamlin could stick around at least for a few more years. But there won't be any changes going into next year as Denny Hamlin's still looking for that first championship. I think his performance is going to drop a little bit, but Denny Hamlin will stay in the 11 car once again in 2025. Up next up with the 12 car for Team Penske. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Ryan Blaney has a contract with Team Penske through 2026 or 2027. Ryan Blaney's had a really good year this year with Team Penske. He's been really extremely fast, has had the pace speed to contend on a week-by-week basis, has picked up multiple victories so far this year, and could get a second championship by the end of this year. If he doesn't do it this year, he could do it in 2025. Up next up with the 13 car for Kaulig Racing. Yes, I think Kaulig Racing is going to run a third part-time entry in 2025 with drivers like AJ Allmendinger, Christian Eckes, and Corey LaJoie. I think so where Corey LaJoie ends up driving part-time next year potentially. I think Christian Eckes will make some select Cup Series starts in the C, and I do think that AJ Allmendinger will make a few select starts maybe at a couple road courses when other drivers want to get a chance and opportunity, but I do think you see a 13 car once again in 2025. Up next up at the 15 car for Ware Racing. Very similar to 2024, this car once again will be a rotation entry. I expect drivers like Ryan Preece, Cody Ware, maybe Haley Deegan, Kaz Grala, and Sheldon Creed, if he does go to Ford next year, to be behind the wheel of the C, with Ryan Preece and Kaz Grala getting majority of the drives. I do think Haley Deegan will make her Cup Series debut within the next year or so, because she does have the funding and sponsorship. But very similar to this year in the last couple years, I think this will be a rotation seat once again in 2025. Up next, up with the 16 car for Kaulig Racing. I don't really think anything major is going to change with this seat. I don't think there's going to be one driver just driving this car. I think you're going to have two drivers who will get a majority of the races. I think AJ Allmendinger and Corey LaJoie are going to split this seat. I think Corey LaJoie is going to run about 16 to 17 races in this car, and I think that you see AJ Allmendinger run about 20 starts in this car next year. I think, like I mentioned earlier, Corey LaJoie will be at Kaulig Racing potentially full-time in the Xfinity Series next year, and I think both these guys will split this seat in 2025 with Kaulig Racing. Up next up at the 17 car for RFK Racing. There won't be any changes next year as Chris Buescher has a long-term contract with RFK Racing. Chris Buescher, we know, got announced at Darlington. He signed a multi-year deal, but Chris Buescher's done a very solid and great job this year. While he might miss the playoffs, unfortunately, he's still been a really great driver in the history of RFK. Picked up 3 wins last year, and I do think Chris Buescher could do that before the end of 2024. He'll stay in the 17 car once again in 2025. Up next, how about the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? There'll be a new driver behind the wheel of the 19 car next year as Mark Truex Jr. is retiring from full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing. His replacement is going to be Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe is going to have James Small as his crew chief. Bass Pro Shops is going to sponsor for a majority of races. We do not know if Hendrick is coming over, but it's going to be a big opportunity for Chase Briscoe next year. He looks to have a fantastic year in the number 19 car, and I think he could have a very strong, great season with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. Up next, up with the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Chris Bell has a long-term contract with JGR. Chris Bell's done a really, really great job this year with Joe Gibbs Racing, already having 2 or 3 wins so far this year, and I do think that Chris Bell could have a chance to win the championship. And I think he's someone many years down the road, he's only going to get better. He's one of the best drivers in the next-gen era, been extremely winning, and I don't see anything changing with him many years. I think he'll stay in the 20 car for many years to come. Up next, how about the 21 car for the Wood Brothers? There'll be a new driver behind the wheel of the 21 car next season. As we know, the Harrison Burr will not be back behind the wheel of the 21. His replacement is going to be Josh Berry, who's coming over from Stewart Haas Racing. Josh Berry has done a really solid job with Stewart Haas Racing this year, had a couple opportunities to win races, and I think Josh Berry is one of the best drivers currently in NASCAR at the moment with how much talent he does have. I do expect this car to run a lot better with Josh Berry behind the wheel. I think he'll do a really solid job this upcoming season with the Wood Brothers. I expect a pretty big year for Josh Berry. Up next up the 22 car for Team Penske. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Joey Logano has a long-term contract with Team Penske. While the last couple years have not gone so well for Joey Logano is still a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. At any point at any time, he could pop off and go on a massive winning streak. I think he's going to do a really solid job next year. I think he'll have a little bit of a bounce back here, and I think he'll have a chance to maybe get a NASCAR Cup Series title in maybe his first odd year with a championship. Up next, how about the 23 car for 23XI Racing? While it's not been officially announced, it is expected that Bubba Wallace will be back in the 23 car for 23XI Racing in 2025. Bubba's been having a really good string of races as of late. The last 4 races, he's finished no worse than 13th, and he's got a good chance to make the playoffs this year. Bubba's been very, very impressive at times. The pace and speed has been there, and I expect it to only get better. And I think in the next couple of years, if you keep him at this team, he could end up being a potential NASCAR Cup Series champion. Up next, how about the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports? There won't be any changes in 2025 as William Byron has a contract through the 2025 season. Now, William Byron will technically be a free agent at the end of next year, but I do think William Byron is going to get a multi-year extension with Hendrick Motorsports in the next couple months. William's been very strong. Hendrick over the last couple of years has already 3 wins so far this year, and I think he's only going to get better, and I think he's going to continue to show what he's capable of for many years down the road, as Byron will say in the 24 car once again in 2025. Up next, up at the 31 car for Kaulig Racing. I had thought there may be a chance of possibility of driver changes for next year, but I don't think anything's going to change. I think Daniel Hemrick will be behind the wheel of the 31 car once again in 2025. Daniel Hemrick does bring sponsorship and funding to the table, and he is a talented race car driver. Say what you want to say about him. He can sometimes get the best out of equipment. He's had a couple top 10s with Kaulig this year, and overall just has not had a bad year so far. If Kaulig wanted to make changes, they could do it, but again, I don't think anything changes. I think Daniel Hemrick will once again be back behind the wheel of the 31 car in 2025. Up next, how about the 33 car for Richard Childress Racing? Yes, I think RCR once again in 2025 is going to run a third part-time entry. I think you're going to see drivers like Austin Hill, Jesse Love, Will Brown, and Ty Dillon get behind the wheel. Now, Austin Hill could end up in the A car next year if Kyle Busch somehow finds a way to leave at the end of the year, but I do think in 2025 this will be a rotation entry. I think Austin Hill will get a majority of starts, and I do think you see this car run about 15 to 18 races next year. So I think it'll be a rotation seat in the NASCAR Cup Series once again in 2025. Up next, up at the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports. There will be a new driver behind the wheel of the seat next year. As we know, Michael McDowell will be going over to Spire Motorsports. The driver will be replacing him is Noah Gragson in the 34 car. While numbers have not been formally announced, everyone expects that Noah Gragson is going to get this seat. Noah's had a really strong year with Haas Racing, obviously with SHR's closure. Everyone had to go find a new place to drive for next year, and I think Noah Gragson is going to do a very solid job next season with Front Row Motorsports. I expect it to be a pretty big year for him. He's going to have Love's Travel Stop as a sponsor. I think that Noah Gragson will have a very strong and pretty great year at Front Row Motorsports in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, up at the 36 car for Front Row Motorsports. We know Front Row Motorsports is expanding to a 3-car operation next year. They've got one of the charters from Haas Racing. So who is going to get the 36 car? My prediction is Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer has been one of the front runners for the third Front Row Motorsports team for the last couple of weeks, and many people believe that he'll be moving into this team in 2025. He's had a really, really solid year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with multiple wins and multiple victories, and I think a lot of people really like Sam Mayer a lot. Yes, he can sometimes be a little bit over-aggressive, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. So I think in 2025, you see Sam Mayer behind the wheel of the number 36 car for this upcoming season. Up next, up at the 38 car for Front Row Motorsports. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Todd Gillen has signed a multi-year contract extension with Front Row Motorsports to continue driving the 38 car. Todd Gillen has had a really good year this year. It's been very impressive. In the top 20 in the regular season standings and the pace and speed have generally been there so far this year. So I don't think anything changes for next year for many years down the road, especially Todd Gillen once again behind the wheel of the number 38 car for Front Row in 2025. Up next up with the 41 car for Haas Factory. Yes, there will be a new NASCAR Cup Series team called Haas Factory, and we already know who's behind the wheel, and that is Cole Custer. We all thought maybe it was going to be the 00 car, but it is going to be Cole Custer behind the wheel of the 41 machine next year. They are going to have an RFK alliance, which is going to be a massive and crucial help to the team having a ton of success next year. Cole's a talented race car driver. He's better than when he was about 4 or 5 years ago. I think Cole Custer will have a pretty solid and strong year with this team next season. Up next up with the 42 car for Legacy Motor Club. There won't be any changes in 2025 as John Hunter Nemechek has a multi-year contract with Legacy Motor Club. John Hunter's had a little bit of struggle so far this year, but I do think he's someone who could absolutely improve and get better. And I think that's something that he'll end up doing next year with him getting better with Toyota. So we'll see John Hunter back in the 42 car once again in 2025. Up next up with the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club. While it's not been officially announced, it is expected that Eric Jones will be back behind the wheel of the 43 car once again in 2025. Eric Jones had a little bit of a struggle year, which is very disappointing, but I think Eric Jones is someone that can absolutely improve. He hasn't linked to Spire Motorsports in the past, but I don't think anything changes for next year. I see Eric Jones once again being behind the wheel of the 43 car in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next up with the 44 car for NY Racing. Yes, I think NY Racing is going to come back next year for a few select races with JJ Yeley. I think they're only going to run around 5 to 6 races. I know they've flirted with maybe going full-time in the future, but I think in 2025 they only come back for a few select races to try to get a little more experience for the future. Up next up with the 45 car for 23XI Racing. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Tyler Reddick has a long-term contract with 23XI Racing. Tyler Reddick's had a fantastic year so far and has a really good chance and opportunity to win the regular season championship. And the consistency has been absolutely incredible so far this year. So I think that's only going to continue to get better for him, and we won't see any changes next year as Reddick will stay in the 45 car once again in 2025. Up next up with the 47 car for JTG Daugherty Racing. There will be no new driver behind the wheels. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. signed a 3-year extension with the team, but there's going to be new ownership coming over there. There could be a chance someone like Kevin Harvick coming over perhaps, but there will be new ownership coming into the team. But the one thing we know right now is there won't be a driver change for sure. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will stay behind the wheel of the 47 car once again in 2025. Up next up with the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Alex Bowman has a multi-year contract with Hendrick Motorsports through the 2026 season. And judging by the performance that Alex Bowman has been having as of late, he will get another extension with this team in the future, probably through 2028, because that's how long Ally's contract currently is with Hendrick Motorsports. So I don't think anything changes for many years down the road. We'll see Alex Bowman once again stay behind the wheel of the 48 car in 2025. Up next up with the 50 car for Team Amer Racing. The former Money team will be back for a few races, in my opinion, next year with Ty Dillon. I think Ty Dillon may return to Xfinity Series at least on a full-time basis next year with a team like RCR, but I don't think anything changes with the driver lineup on the Cup side. I think you'll see Ty Dillon behind the wheel of the number 50 car once again in 2025. Up next up with the 51 car for Ware Racing. While there have been rumors of Justin Neely potentially leaving the team at the end of this year to go to a team like Spire, we are expecting that Justin Neely will be behind the wheel once again next season. Justin Neely's had a really good year with Ware Racing. The pace and speed has been there. He's contended for a few outside victories so far, and he's been really good on road courses as well. So nothing's going to change next year. Justin Neely will once again stay behind the wheel of the 51 car, in my opinion, for 2000 and to 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next up with the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. There won't be any changes in 2025 as Ty Gibbs has a long-term contract, plus of course he is the grandson of Joe Gibbs. Ty Gibbs had a very solid year so far, but the last couple weeks he has had a lot of engine failures, but I do think that Ty Gibbs is a driver that can overcome some of those issues and some of those problems that the team already has. So we won't see any changes next year for 2025. We'll see Ty Gibbs back behind the wheel of the 54 car next season. Up next up with the 56 car for 23XI Racing. Yes, I think 23XI Racing is going to run a 4th part-time entry next year with drivers like Martin Truex Jr., Corey Heim, if Carlos Kerber want to come out of retirement, they could be behind the wheel. Maybe Kamui Kobayashi, and also maybe Juan Pablo Montoya as well. Mark Truex Jr. is expected to run a majority of the races in this part-time entry, as they'll have 4 part-time cars for sure next year. We are expecting to see this team come and run a 4th car, and we'll see them use the number 56 car, in my opinion, for my prediction for the 2025 season. Up next, up with the 60 car for RFK Racing, also known as the Sage 60 car. While RFK Racing is flirting with having a 3rd charter, I don't think they're going to get a 3rd charter for next season. My prediction is that David Reagan, Cam Waters, maybe Sheldon Creed if he goes to Ford, or maybe Haley Deegan get behind the wheel of this seat for next year. I think you may see some other outside candidates surprise a lot of people to get behind the wheel. Maybe Joey Hand as well, who made a start earlier. I think you see them run a couple other drivers behind the wheel of this seat for 2025. Up next, up with the 62 car for Beard Motorsports. I don't really think this team's going to be around for many races this upcoming season, but I think you'll see drivers like Parker Restlev and Anthony Alfredo, who are already making starts at Beard Motorsports this season. I think both drivers will get another chance and opportunity. Both have a ton of talent. Both can get the best out of equipment, and we'll see Beard Motorsports once again on the racetrack for the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season, probably at all the super speedways. Up next, up the 6.6 car for NBM Motorsports. I think his team will make a comeback in 2025 for a few select races with Timmy Hill behind the wheel. Timmy, of course, will be fully focused on the Truck Series operation, in my opinion, for next year, but I do think this team 100% makes a comeback and return, and I think Timmy Hill will be behind the wheel of the number 6.6 car once again in 2025. Up next, up with the 6.7 car for 2311 Racing. 2311 Racing is expected to purchase a 3rd charter for the 2025 season, and many believe that Riley Herbst will be behind the wheel, and that's who I think will be behind the wheel of the 67 car next year. Riley Herbst has been impressing at times this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's had some very strong performances as of late, and I think Riley Herbst is someone who might actually run very well. While I don't think he's going to run as well as Tyler Reddick or Bubba Wallace has done, because it is an expansion team, I do think that Riley Herbst could have a very solid and strong year, and I think he'll do a pretty solid job next year with the team, in my opinion. Up next, up with the 71 car for Spire Motorsports. There'll be a new driver behind the wheel of the 71 car next year, as Michael McDowell will join Spire Motorsports in 2025. Michael McDowell has had a very, very solid year in the last couple years of Front Row, and if there's someone that really could build Spire up to be a really great team, it is Michael McDowell. We've seen what he's been able to do with Front Row Motorsports, and it's just been absolutely magical and impressive. So I think that's only going to continue with him getting behind the wheel, and I think Michael McDowell will be in the 71 car once again in 2025, or for the first time, I should say. Up next, up with the 77 car for Spire Motorsports. There won't be driver changes in 2025 as Carson Hocevar has a multi-year contract with Spire Motorsports. While there have rumors of him maybe going to a team like Trackhouse Racing, that will not be happening next year. He's had a really good year, all things considered, with Spire. He's been the best driver of Spire Motorsports so far this year, and I think he's really going to continue helping that program only get better. So I think Carson's a really great talent, and he can absolutely get the best out of equipment for sure. He'll be back in the 77 car, in my opinion, next season. Up next, I have the 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. Yes, I think Live Fast Motorsports only going to come back for a few races next year, however, with BJ McLeod behind the wheel in every single one of them. We've seen him run a few races this year, all super speedways, and I think that's all they're going to run next year. I think BJ is going to be fully focused on bringing back the Xfinity program for next year, potentially. I see BJ get behind the wheel of the seat in 2025 once again. Up next, I have the 84 car for Legacy Motor Club. I think Legacy is going to cut back on how much this car races for 2025, with Jimmy Johnson only running a race or two next year, maybe the Daytona 500 and maybe the Chicago Street Course or the Brickyard 400. I think Corey Heim also will get a few select starts in this seat as well, as he's looking to build up his resume and program. But I do think Legacy Motor Club will bring this car back for just a few select races in 2025. Up next, I'm at the 88 car for Junior Motorsports. Yes, I think Junior Motorsports is going to find a way to still enter the NASCAR Cup Series part-time next year. I think they're going to have Sammy Smith in this car, and I think Connor Zillage will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut next year. We know Connor Zillage has been linked to running full-time with JRM for 2025, and Xfinity may be taking over the one car. I think you see this team definitely try to go cup racing at least part-time, but I do not think it will be a chartered entry. I think it will be an unchartered entry for 2025. Up next, how about the 97 car for Trackhouse Racing? Trackhouse Racing is expected to run a third charter in the 2025 season, and it's expected to be driven by Shane Van Gisbergen. SVG has been having a really strong year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's had a very strong season, already 3 wins, which he's still the winningest driver so far in Xfinity Series competition. I think he deserves a chance and opportunity to move up full-time to the NASCAR Cup Series, and he's got sponsorship from Red Bull and WeatherTech, among other companies. We think he'll be going full-time next year. He's had a really strong season, and I think he'll for sure move up to the NASCAR Cup Series in 2025. And finally, let's talk about the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. There aren't expected to be any changes for next year, as Daniel Suarez is expected to sign a multi-year contract extension with Trackhouse Racing. While he hasn't signed the extension at this point, many people believe it's going to get it done. Look, Suarez, while he struggled at times with Trackhouse Racing in recent years, I still think that Daniel Suarez is a very talented and a pretty solid race car driver who can sometimes get the best out of equipment. So I think Daniel Suarez will be back in the Cup Series once again with Trackhouse Racing in 2025. So, those are my updated 2025 NASCAR Cup Silly Season predictions. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Finally, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your 2025 NASCAR Cup Silly Season predictions? Let me know them in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we'll have a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last week or so. Tuesday, we're going to have the intro video for the Cup Series race at Richmond. Wednesday, we'll have the race picks for the truck race along with the NASCAR news video. And then on Thursday, we'll have Cup race picks for Richmond. And we'll have a lot of great content dropping over the course of the next couple of weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. And I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.